The gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Estes, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent for all members to have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material on the subject for the special order.
Without objection.
Tonight, lying in state in the rotunda of this Capitol building is Robert Joseph Dole. Bob Dole is an American statesman, a former member of this House of Representatives, a former U.S. Senator, a World War II veteran, a tireless fighter for what's right, and last but not least, a Kansan. Tonight, we want to reflect on and honor the actions and accomplishments of this great American hero. Today, I'm here with my colleagues from the Sunflower State and other members of the House of Representatives to honor Robert Joseph Dole, one of the finest Americans to ever serve in this institution. Bob Dole has a record of devotion and service to this country, a World War II hero, the Majority Leader of the Senate, and a Republican nominee for president. But to truly understand the man Bob was, you have to know a bit about where he was from. Because out of all the things Bob did and accomplished through his long life, I know that Bob always epitomizes what it meant to be a son of Kansan. Our state is situated in the very heart of our great nation, more than 1,000 miles west of Washington, and is imbibed with a strong case of freedom, with great compassion for our fellow man. The vivid sunsets of amber waves of grain are a constant reminder of the beauty and grace that only come from a loving God. And our climate, which can include some of the harshest winters or cloudless summers, produces hardy people who are resolute, undeterred, and quick to adapt to any challenges they may face. It's from Kansas, where Bob Dole first entered the world in the summer of 1923. A natural athlete, he was recruited by famed basketball coach Phog Allen and was a Jayhawk basketball player, a football player, and ran track at the University of Kansas. But the grave threats against our freedom and our nation called Bob away from his studies at KU and placed him in battle overseas during World War II. His enlistment in the United States Army would take him far from the flat plains of Kansas to another continent, and he returned to the shores of America with 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and scars of war. Permanent damage would restrict him to a hospital for more than a year and limit the mobility in his right arm for the rest of his life. Bob Dole's service to our country during World War II is more than most of us will ever give back to the country in our entire lifetime. But Bob wasn't done yet. After returning to school, this time at Washburn University in Topeka, he served in the Kansas House of Representatives and then as Russell County Attorney. In 1961, Bob Dole brought his grit, optimism, and wit to the chamber we're standing in today, having been elected by Kansans of the 6th District, and then again by the 1st District after redistricting. He represented Kansas in the People's House for 8 years before the entire Sunflower State sent him across the Capitol to the Senate. His passion for the United States, ability to bring colleagues together, and sense of humor elevated him to lead the Republican Party. But Dole would also seek to serve the American people from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He was the running mate to President Gerald Ford and eventually earned the respect of voters across the country to be the Republican nominee for president. It was at that time that he left the Senate, noting that the next chapter of his life would either be in the White House or a return to his beloved home state of Kansas. As votes were tallied on November 5th, 1996, it became clear that Russell, Kansas would welcome their son home. And I can tell you with certainty that his commitment to the United States did not end with electoral defeat, as he continued to stay active in the causes he fought for as a public servant and remained a critical activist in Kansas politics. Madam Speaker, most of the representatives of this chamber are familiar with Bob Dole as the war hero, the statesman, and the presidential nominee, but I had the privilege of traveling throughout Kansas with him. While the country's gotten to know Bob on the Senate floor or the campaign trail, I saw Bob in small towns and coffee shops with small business owners and farmers. My wife Susan and I were blessed to have known Bob and his wife Elizabeth, another dedicated public servant, and to witness his genuine warmth and devotion firsthand. In his farewell address to the Senate on June 11, 1996, Senator Dole quoted the opening verse to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, saying, "To everything there is a season." He went on to say that his season in the Senate was about to end. Today we recognize that another season for Bob Dole has come to a close. The scripture that Bob started to read from continues saying, "A time to be born and a time to die." And later it says, "A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance." This week is a time for mourning. We grieve the loss of our friend, and we pray for his beloved wife, Elizabeth, and daughter, Robin. This is also a time to honor, which is why my colleagues and I were humbled to introduce the resolution that formally allowed for Bob Dole to lie in state at the United States Capitol Rotunda. During his nearly 4 decades of service in the House and Senate, I know Bob Dole walked through the Rotunda with Kansans and colleagues, working to protect our liberties and make our country better for all Americans. And it's fitting that he be honored in that space today. I can think of no other person right now who deserves to lie in state more than my friend and fellow Kansan, Senator Bob Dole. And I believe it will be a long time before we see someone of his stature again. In the meantime, it's up to the rest of us to carry on his legacy, advance freedom, and maybe even provide some humor to our nation and our world. With that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize and yield 5 minutes to my friend and colleague from Kansas, the current representative of Senator Dole's hometown of Russell, Kansas, Mr. Mann.
Congressman, I want to thank my friend and Congressman Estes for hosting this tonight and for really doing this to further the memory and legacy of Bob Dole. You know, Bob Dole's passing, General's passing, leaves a void for America. I think it maybe especially hits those of us from Kansas especially hard. So thank you for doing this, my friend. America's lost a statesman, noble war hero, and a service-minded Kansan who never forgot where he came from. Senator Bob Dole died peacefully at the age of 98, leaving his district, state, and country better off for his many contributions over 79 years of public life. My prayers and gratitude for Senator Dole go out to his family. In World War II, Bob Dole was struck in the back and nearly killed by a German shell just months before the war ended. He described his experience later in 1987 speech as a sting in the shoulder. And he said the first thing he thought about was his home, Russell, Kansas. He was expected to die in the hospital, but he lived. He was told that he would never recover from his injuries, which included paralysis from the neck down, but his unquenchable spirit carried him through. He simply refused to take no for an answer and chose to fight for his life and recovery, the scars of which he carried with him for the rest of his life. He was awarded 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star for his military service. Before he became a United States Senator, Bob Dole was the congressman representing the big 1st District of Kansas. After serving in the House of Representatives for 8 years, Kansas sent him to the United States Senate, where he served for 27 years, acted as the majority leader twice, and became his party's nominee for the highest office in the land in 1996. It's inspiring and humbling to stand on the shoulders of such greatness. A few weeks ago, I was blessed to spend some time with Senator Dole. His love for Kansas and her people were on full display, and his excited curiosity about our plans for the Big First. On that day, he was thoughtful, committed, and energetic champion for our nation and our way of life in rural Kansas. He always treated others with respect and kindness, especially his fellow veterans, as he attended nearly every honor flight that came to D.C. to tour the World War II Memorial. He was a fierce advocate for his political views, but he was equally committed to cross-aisle friendship and camaraderie. In our meeting, he spoke about his idea of the Kansas approach, the markers of which he identified as honesty, hard work, respect for your roots, common sense, service, simplicity, and genuine, thoughtful care for people. I left our time inspired and commissioned as Senator Dole made it clear that we must never forget where we come from. He knew deep down that the heartbeat of our nation lies in places like his hometown of Russell, Kansas. I know we all are working actively for looking for ways to honor Bob Dole's legacy. One way is by supporting the McGovern-Dole International Food for Education and Child Nutrition Program, which aims to address childhood hunger, improve literacy, train teachers, and make the world a better place for young people across the globe. The program is named in part after Senator Dole to honor his work towards eliminating childhood hunger. Earlier this year, I was proud to offer an appropriations request to the McGovern-Dole program and look forward to its continued success. Yesterday, in another effort to honor his legacy, I introduce a resolution to name the post office in Russell, Kansas, the Robert J. Dole Memorial Post Office, quickly joined by my other colleagues from Kansas. Senator Dole stayed true to his roots in rural Kansas and embodied his core values of faith, family, and freedom. Naming a post office after one of Kansas' favorite sons in the town that he grew up in is a small but meaningful way to pay tribute to this Kansas giant and American hero. I look forward to this resolution's swift passage commemorating the life of Senator Dole. A few nights ago, I talked to my 8-year-old son, Austin, about Senator Dole. After I finished sharing some stories about his life, Austin said, Dad, I think God had a special plan for Bob Dole. That is so true, and God had a special plan for all of us when he gave Senator Dole the faith, values, longevity, and leadership platform that he stewarded so well. I want to close by quoting Senator Dole, who often said, quote, I offer a willingness to work hard, to hang tough, to go that distance. I offer the strength and determination molded in America's small-town heartland and tempered during a career of public service to bring common sense answers to complex problems facing America, end quote. Senator Dole's legacy will echo into the future, and his patriotic spirit serves as a benchmark for anyone who believes that our brightest days are yet to come. Thank you, Senator Dole, for working tirelessly to make the world a better place. May you rest in peace. Thank you again, Congressman Estes, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you. It's commendable that, as the current representative for his hometown, that it's great to have you here to be able to speak as a fellow Kansan and a representative for Bob's hometown.
Thank you.
Yep. And now I'd like to call on one of my other fellow colleagues from the state of Kansas, who represents the 2nd Congressional District and was a former state treasurer, as I was before I came to Congress, Congressman Jake LaTurner. Recognize him for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Congressman Estes. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor, remember, and celebrate the life of a true American hero who was the very personification of service. I am proud and humbled to stand in for the over 700,000 Kansans in my district that wish they could be in the Capitol today to pay tribute to Senator Bob Dole. Senator Dole grew up in a small town called Russell, Kansas, at a time when many hardworking families were being burdened by the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, and the Doles were not immune to these hardships, living in their basement so they could rent out the top of their house to make ends meet. Bob Dole attended the University of Kansas, where he was a star athlete, playing under the famous Fog Allen at the Jayhawks basketball team, and began his service when enlisted in the Army. Like many of his greatest generation, Bob Dole dropped everything at the age of 21 when he was called to active duty and shipped off to Italy to fight for freedom across the world. Towards the end of the war, Senator Dole was struck in the upper back and right arm by shrapnel from a German shell while fighting in the mountains in northern Italy, and was paralyzed from the neck down. He was sent to the Percy Jones Army Hospital in Battle Creek, Michigan, where he met some fellow soldiers that would have an impact on the rest of his life. They ended up calling themselves the Percy Jones Alumni Caucus, which consisted of Senator Dole, the ward's ranking officer, Colonel Philip Hart, who later became Senator Phil Hart, and longtime friend of Bob Dole, Daniel Inouye, who represented Hawaii in the United States Senate. Many doctors, like Dr. Kalikian of Chicago, and medical professionals thought Senator Dole wouldn't survive his injuries, and he did. They thought he would never walk again, but he proved them wrong. The hospital was turned into a federal building and renamed the Hart-Dole Inouye Federal Center in 2003. Senator Dole spent the rest of his life fighting for veterans and those who served our nation, and was instrumental in making the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. a reality. After being awarded 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star for his selfless service in World War II, Senator Dole served in the Kansas State House and as county attorney before being elected to the House of Representatives, where he served for 8 years. He then moved across the Capitol to represent all Kansans in the United States Senate for almost 3 decades, serving as Republican Majority Leader twice, and becoming the Republican nominee for president in 1996. Senator Dole was a giant in Congress. He fought to preserve freedom and democracy while also working across the aisle to champion legislation that has impacted millions of Americans from all walks of life. Many Americans know and recognize his major legislative achievements, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and the McGovern-Dole International Food for Education program. But many do not realize the impact he had on passing legislation that his name was not on at all, and how good he was at getting things done and moving the ball down the field for Kansas and for our nation. Bob Dole truly embodied what it means to be a statesman and never wavered from his passion for a better and stronger America. I urge my colleagues to join me in praying for his wife, Elizabeth, his daughter, Robin, and the entire Dole family as they mourn the loss of not just one of our nation's greatest public servants, but also a devoted husband and father. I want to close on something that Senator Dole once said. He said, "It's not who you are, it's whether you make a difference." May we all remember that every single day in this building and across this country. Senator Dole will be dearly missed. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, thank you, my friend, Congressman LaTurner. It's great to have you here to be able to talk about our fellow Kansan and such a great American hero. So, thank you. And now, at this time, Madam Speaker, I'd like to recognize the gentlewoman from California, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for his recognition. I thank him for hosting us this evening in this special order to honor a real hero in our country, Bob Dole. Thank you for what you did for the bereavement resolution, enabling us to have the use of the rotunda, which takes an act of Congress to use the rotunda and to have the catafalque that was constructed for Abraham Lincoln to lie on so that Bob Dole could lie on that. True hero for our country. I take great pride, Mr. Estes, in the fact that Senator Dole served in the House of Representatives as his first step in the Congress of the United States. I was teased by some of the senators saying, "You're laying claim to him. He was only there 4 years. He was in the Senate over 24 years, and yet we do." Because he, again, his service here is a source of pride to us. But not only that, when he turned 90, we had his birthday party in Statuary Hall on the House side of the Capitol. And so many of his friends and colleagues who had served with him and friends and staff who had served with him came, and I was happy to be invited by him to participate in the ceremony. And it was his 90th birthday, fully pledging to be there to honor him for his 100th birthday. Well, we made it to 98 and nearly a half. 98 and nearly a half. A great life, beautifully lived. One that is justified by his lying in state, and as I said today at our ceremony, wrapped in the American flag. It's hard to think of anyone who deserves that honor more than Bob Dole. Super patriot, as a young person, fought for our freedom in World War II, has been a champion for men and women in uniform ever since, along with Elizabeth Dole, Senator Dole also, Senator Elizabeth Dole, who took up the cause of hidden heroes, those who care for our men and women in uniform when they come home and need care. The beautiful love between the two of them was a joy to all who knew and loved them, know and love them still in the present. And they are prayerful, patriotic, lovely Americans. Indeed, it was just 4 years, almost 4 years ago, and we gathered under the very dome where we were in the rotunda to present him with the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor that Congress can bestow. We knew then, as we do today, that Bob Dole belongs among the pantheons of patriots memorialized in the rotunda. And I couldn't help but thinking, watching him lying in state there, he felt very comfortable under the dome of the Capitol, where he had spent so much time, but time beautifully spent in leadership, making a difference. As his casket lies in this temple of democracy right now, draped in the American flag, we're so proud. From his heroism in World War II to his leadership in the House and the Senate, he served our nation with legendary courage, dignity, and integrity. Duty was a word that sort of guided his actions, his duty to our country in the military, in the elective office, and as an elder statesman in this country. He was greatly admired on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Capitol and across the country because he was a person of integrity, a person of his word. He worked in a bipartisan way, whether it was addressing hunger in America, respect for people with disabilities, and advocates for troops, veterans, and our hidden heroes. And of course, he took great pride in his work on Social Security. He continued his powerful legacy beyond his retirement from Congress, alongside, again, his loving wife and prayerful partner, Senator Elizabeth Dole. His life and legacy will forever challenge us to act worthy of him. As he said, we shouldn't try to change the ideals of our country. We should try to be worthy of them. May it be a comfort to his beloved wife Elizabeth, his dear, dear daughter Robin, his longtime colleagues and friends, to the people of Kansas, that a grateful nation joins them and prays for them at this sad time as we mourn with them. May he rest in a very much deserved peace. Thank you, Senator Dole, for your leadership to our country, for being a leader, an exemplary leader, one that everyone would want to be like. We're going to miss him. His humor, he was very funny and very serious and very patriotic. I thank you, Mr. Estes, for bringing us together to say some more words about Senator Robert Dole, and Senator Robert Dole, and it's such an honor to have him lie in state under the rotunda, an honor shared by very few people, but one very much deserved by Senator Dole. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate you saying those kind words about son of Kansas and a fellow American hero that we appreciate so much. Thank you. You know, we spent a lot of time tonight talking about all of the great things about Bob Dole and his relationship with Kansas, but you know, he has a bigger impact on people across the country, and including his relationship with his wife Elizabeth and all the relationships there. And you know, right now I'd like to yield 3 minutes to a former policy advisor for Senator Elizabeth Dole, my friend and a gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and legacy of Senator Bob Dole, one of America's greatest. I have so many different memories over the years it is hard to know where to start or where to finish. Though I first came to Capitol Hill when Senator Dole was still in the U.S. Senate, my first extended interaction with him was when his wife Elizabeth was running for the U.S. Senate to succeed my current boss at the time, U.S. Senator Jesse Helms, who was retiring. There was one day I remember so well. I had taken time off from my work to help with Elizabeth's campaign, and of course Bob Dole, no stranger to North Carolina, came to town several times to campaign for her. On this particular occasion, we had lined up a number of visits for Bob Dole that included a stop at a tobacco receiving station in Smithfield, and then on to several other stops in Goldsboro. As is the case with any campaign, there was little downtime, which is just how Bob Dole liked it. He had a real knack for retail campaigning. He was never at a loss for words, always had a quip, and always left everyone laughing. As I recall, it was about 11:30 a.m. that day, and we had just finished up the stop at the tobacco receiving station where we had met with a number of tobacco farmers. Now we were on our way to Goldsboro. I wasn't that hungry, but I could tell the campaign staffer driving Bob Dole was ready to find some lunch somewhere. Well, Bob Dole was hungry too, but had a little different idea about it. So once we leave the tobacco receiving station, he directs the young man to stop at a local convenience store. Bob Dole goes in, talks it up with the lady running the cash register, buys a Krispy Kreme donut, and comes back out. Sensing this was the only lunch stop Bob Dole wanted to make, the young staffer turned to him and said, "Senator, don't you want to stop and get a real lunch somewhere?" The senator replied, "Bob Dole doesn't eat lunch until after the election," as only Bob Dole could say it. And of course, he often talked in third person. I would see Bob Dole from time to time after that election, but I didn't get to really know him until I came to Washington as a new member of this House of Representatives. He would call from time to time to talk about my campaign, to see if I had an opponent, to talk about what was going on in the House and the Senate, or just to talk life and politics in general. I will always cherish those conversations. A great Kansan from humble roots, Senator Bob Dole answered the call to serve his country, fighting for liberty for 79 years. It wasn't long ago that I got to visit the site where he was so badly injured in Italy. As I looked around the landscape of that area, that spot where he was wounded, so far from home in a foreign land, here was this very young man, and so many others like him, facing evil head on. Several years previous to that trip, I had gotten the opportunity to travel abroad to take a look at implementation of our country's food aid programs. I will never forget being in a very remote area of Ethiopia, looking at thousands of children who were eating porridge during lunch at school, and only because of the McGovern Dole International Food for Education and Child Nutrition Program. It was the only real meal those children received during the day. Through his final years, months, and even until his final days, Senator Dole remained so involved and passionate for the principles that made this country great, while caring for our most vulnerable. The number of veterans and their families he greeted at the World War II Memorial during his final years would be far too many to count. And that is just a tiny glimpse of what he did to support, lift up, and encourage others. There is no way to properly measure his impact, not just in America, but around the world. He was the embodiment of the American spirit and what it means to be a true patriot and statesman. His lifetime of commitment, dedication, and perseverance for this country was and is unmatched. His legacy of service and statesmanship will only grow greater through the prism of history. Madam Speaker, there are those special individuals you get to know in life who help you keep it all in perspective. I will always be so appreciative of Bob Dole, the man, and what a giant of a man he was. May God's peace and grace embrace his wife Elizabeth and daughter Robin, as well as the rest of his family in the hours, days, and months to come. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rouser. It's great to be able to have broader reflections of Bob Dole and all the things and the people that he's touched. You know, he served obviously a long time in the Senate, including as majority and minority leader, and you know, with his wife Elizabeth as well. You know, I actually have a couple of quotes from our current senators from Kansas, and wanted to just mention those as part of this special hour tonight. You know, the senior senator from Kansas, Jerry Moran, said, "Whether it was on the battlefields, in the halls of Congress, or in his everyday life, Senator Dole's passion and dedication to his fellow Kansans and to his country was a steady reminder that a single person can make a difference and change the world. He held an unmatched patriotism born out of wartime sacrifice that marked every day of his existence. Yet rather than ask for help, he offered it. Senator Dole used his horrific wartime experience to be a champion every day for those with disabilities and for veterans, and I thank him for his service to Kansas and to this country." And Senator Roger Marshall shared, "As one of the heroes from our greatest generation, you would be hard-pressed to find somebody with a bigger heart and more resilience than Senator Dole. He was an American hero, a statesman of the highest order, and one of the greatest legislators of all time. While he had incredible negotiating skills and was as tough as nails, it was his big heart and ability to work across the aisle that constantly led the way and delivered results for all Americans. And now, Madam Speaker, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to a U.S. Army veteran and a friend of mine, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. MEIJER.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, this week we bid farewell to Senator Bob Dole, a great leader with not only an incredible political mind, but more importantly, an unwavering dedication to public service. Not only a decorated war hero who exemplified the very best of what it means to be an American, but also someone who set an example for others with a commitment to pragmatism, bipartisanship, and governing in the best interests of the American people. After being wounded in combat, Bob Dole recuperated in our district in West Michigan at the former Battle Creek Sanitarium, pressed into wartime service as the Percy Jones Army Hospital. That facility no longer exists in that form, and I'm proud to say today it is the Hart Dole Inouye Federal Center, a long-lasting testament to not only his wartime service, but also his connection to West Michigan, whereas my colleague, Mr. LaTurner, mentioned his survival was questioned and his recuperation was long and lengthy, but also where he built friendships and ties, especially with Mr. Inouye, that would go on to last for over a half-century. During those nearly 3 decades that he spent in the United States Senate, Senator Dole was a voice for the veterans community. His career-long efforts to help the men and women who served in uniform, they culminated in office with the Veteran Benefit Improvements Act in 1996, but he also did not forget, even after he left office, that he had attended college on the GI Bill in the post-World War II period, and he helped a young upstart organization that I volunteered with called Student Veterans of America, and many others campaign for and pass the post-9/11 GI Bill so that our generation of veterans could receive the same educational benefits that he had. He made tangible improvements to the lives of our veterans through focusing on substance. And throughout this career, he never lost sight of the job that he was sent here to do. His service is an example of how government can truly function and serve when we're committed to prioritizing results over politics. So tonight, my wife, Gabriella, and I extend our heartfelt condolences to his wife, Senator Elizabeth Dole, and all those who grieve Senator Dole's passing. His memory and legacy will live on in the contributions he has made to our republic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. MEIJER. I appreciate you bringing it up. As we talk about different stories about Bob Dole, obviously his time in the hospital when, he spent 39 months going through and recovering from his injuries. It was, obviously there's some in-depth stories of his time in Michigan Hospital as well as others. And now at this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, my friend, Mr. Carter.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and for doing this tonight. Very, very special. Madam Speaker, I rise today to remember the life of a political giant, an American icon, and a World War II hero, Senator Bob Dole. Senator Dole was a remarkable man and a driven public servant who I personally strive to emulate. And why wouldn't we? What a great example he set for all of us. I had the pleasure of spending some time with Senator Dole, who even in his old age would brave the cold D.C. winters to sit out front of the World War II Memorial and thank those there to pay tribute to fallen soldiers. I remember being over there and they would set up a stool, and it was cold, and they would set up a stool for Senator Dole to sit on, and he would sit there and draped in blankets. And he would not leave until every veteran came by and he spoke to them and he thanked them and he shook their hand. That had to be so special to them. There are not many people, let alone those as accomplished as a senator, who can set aside their ego to thank perfect strangers, but he did. He did just that. He left an unforgettable impression, not only on those that knew him or those that he served, but on this entire country. Senator Dole was a generational leader and a voice that was heard by all, even those across the aisle. His zest for life and making our country better was infectious. Not everyone can curry favor with those of a different political ideology, but Senator Dole was not like every other member of Congress. When describing his time in the Senate, he quipped that if you're hanging around with nothing to do and the zoo is closed, come over to the Senate. You'll get the same kind of feeling and you won't have to pay. Didn't we love his humor? I imagine he felt the same about his eight years in the House of Representatives, and I can almost attest to that myself. Senator Dole set an example of conservatism and of bravery. There's no one more deserving of the honor of lying in state at the U.S. Capitol than Senator Bob Dole. An outstanding example of what a public servant should be. His loss devastates all of us. My thoughts and prayers are with his wife, Elizabeth, Senator Dole, his daughter, Robin, his family and friends, as well as this country, as we all come together to mourn this tremendous loss. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Carter. I appreciate you. It just goes to say that, even though as a fellow Kansan, Bob Dole was able to reach out and have such an impact on so many people's lives across the country and in some cases across the world. I do want to make one comment about, just one of the other people that Bob Dole actually touched as, in his life. There's countless of Kansans that have worked for Bob Dole and the people of Kansas that were involved in the work that he did in the House and the Senate during his time there. And, it's amazing the number of people around D.C. or back in Kansas or elsewhere in the country. One particular staff member, David Spears, served for 3 years in Senator Dole's D.C. office as an ag legislative assistant and 4 years as state director in Kansas. He wrote me saying it was an honor and a privilege of a lifetime to serve on Senator Dole's staff and to serve the constituents of Kansas. I learned many leadership lessons from him that carried over into my additional years of public service, as well as my career in the private sector. Senator Dole provided great examples of strong leadership that included listening to all sides and an ability to build a consensus on very difficult and divisive issues. He was a statesman and a great American. He made a huge difference in my life and will be missed. And now, at this time, I'd like to recognize the gentlewoman from New York, my friend Miss Tenney, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Estes, for holding this. We really appreciate your remembrances and so many members remembering Senator Robert Dole as his body lies in state at our nation's capital. This is an honor we reserve for only the most deserving Americans who have rendered such great service to our country. Senator Dole was rightfully earned this honor. Bob Dole's life displayed courage of the highest order. As a young man, he fought in World War II and was wounded in northern Italy. He carried his wounds for the rest of his life with grace, dignity, and great compassion. Bob Dole became a champion for veterans and those also living with disabilities. The shadow of Senator Dole's political career looms large. His tremendous influence on American political life over the last half-century does not need to be restated. For now, I will just say this, that from presidential campaigns to the Senate floor, Bob Dole was an unyielding opponent, a steadfast ally, a fearless leader, and also a person with tremendous sense of humor. Even in that generation we call the greatest generation, Bob Dole stood above the rest. He was a paragon of courage, class, and patriotism. As a stalwart conservative, he was able to work with both Democrats and Republicans to enact positive legislation that improved life for all Americans. Senator Dole's compass was never swayed by popular opinion or political expedience. He stayed the course, and he kept his focus on the eternal principles our founders set forth, principles of liberty, integrity, and dignity. His unwavering commitment to these principles propelled him to great heights on the national and world stages, but this humble Kansan never allowed himself to grow haughty or self-absorbed. If anything, his historic career only made him even more modest. This week, we lost Senator Dole at the age of 98. His body lies in the Capitol Rotunda, and it is fitting for us to honor him in this way. His death is a reminder that each of us in this body must do what we can to carry on the work of protecting and defending the United States with integrity, compassion, courage, and honor. Bob Dole was a patriot, a public servant, and a gentleman, and this nation will always be grateful for the incredible life that he led. World War II veterans are also special in my heart, particularly in my community where I had the privilege of being involved with bringing veterans to the World War II Memorial in many trips that we had early in the 2000s when President Bush was in office. We took them to the World War II Memorial, where I know that Bob Dole greeted them. We also took them on a nice dinner cruise in the Potomac, which they enjoyed, and also visits to the White House. And like all of these wonderful World War II victims, they were much like Senator Dole, really, truly of the greatest generation. And so I want to just say to Senator Dole, we salute you. May God rest your soul. May God bless your family and this great nation. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Claudia. Ms. Tenney, I appreciate that tribute to our great son of Kansas.
Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. So, Bob Dole touched so many people's lives around the country and around the world. I do want to, just mention some of the folks that we have some comments from, and so I'll refer to some of those. Kansas is an agriculture state. Senator Dole served as the ranking member on the Senate Agriculture Committee from 1975 to 1978. The Kansas Association of Wheat Growers president, Justin Knopf, said in part, wheat farmers across Kansas are pausing to reflect and honor the life and legacy of Senator Bob Dole. A lifetime friend to Kansas wheat growers, wheat fields planted to the variety bearing his name will carry extra significance this season as I and other farmers tend to them along their journey to producing grain to feed and nourish people. Senator Dole was an endless champion for farmers and also for those who were food insecure and saw the potential in connecting grain from Kansas wheat fields to those here at home and around the world who were in need. Another thing is we talk about Senator Dole, obviously we talk a lot about his involvement during World War II. And, as a World War II veteran, Bob Dole spent a great deal of time working to thank and assist the men and women who sacrificed for our country. Paralyzed Veterans of America National President Charles Brown released a statement saying in part, PVA joins the nation in mourning the passing of Senator Bob Dole and extends our heartfelt prayers to Senator Elizabeth Dole and the entire Dole family. Prior to becoming one of America's longest-serving U.S. senators, Dole served in the U.S. Army and later became a decorated World War II veteran and two-time Purple Heart recipient. A champion of the Americans with Disability Act, he devoted his entire life to advancing the causes of people with disabilities, as well as advocating for servicemen and women who sacrificed their lives for this nation. Following his tenure in Congress, Dole worked tirelessly on seeking U.S. ratification of the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The effects of war left Senator Dole with lasting challenges in his life, something that strengthened his resolve to help Americans with disabilities. Maria Town, President and CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities, said in a statement, "The world as we know it today is more accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities because of Senator Bob Dole." Senator Dole worked to elevate the voices and perspective of people with disabilities, encouraging greater leadership opportunities for disabled people, and sharing his experiences of disability with his colleagues to build bipartisan consensus for disability policy issues. His passing represents an enormous loss for AAPD and the disability community at large and the nation. Senator Dole, through all of his work and his life activities, has earned the respect of countless leaders, including our former presidents from both sides of the aisle. Former President Donald Trump released a statement saying, "Bob Dole was an American war hero and true patriot for our nation. He served the great state of Kansas with honor, and the Republican Party was made stronger by his service. Our nation mourns his passing, and our prayers are with Elizabeth and his wonderful family. Former President Barack Obama said in part, "His sharp wit was matched only by his integrity, and he lived his life in a way that made it clear just how proud he was to be an American and how committed he was to making this country everything he knew it could be." And many of us recall the moving moment when former President George H.W. Bush was lying in state, and Senator Dole stood and saluted his friend. It was a moment that reminded us of patriotism, camaraderie, and devotion. His son and former President George W. Bush said, "Laura and I are saddened by the passing of a great patriot, Senator Bob Dole. This good man represented the finest in American values. He defended them in uniform during World War II. He advanced them in the United States Senate, and he lived them as a father, husband, and friend. Our entire family benefited from that friendship, including my father. I will always remember Bob's salute to my late dad in the Capitol, and now we Bushes salute Bob and give thanks for his life of principled service. Laura and I send our heartfelt condolences to Elizabeth and join our fellow citizens in prayer for her comfort." And former President Bill Clinton, his political rival, who would later honor the late senator with a Presidential Medal of Freedom, said, "Bob Dole dedicated his entire life to serving the American people. From his heroism in World War II to the 35 years he spent in Congress. After all he gave in the war, he didn't have to give more, but he did. His example should inspire people today and for generations to come." You know, tonight, I and a lot of the speakers here have talked a lot about the life of Bob Dole. And we've talked about different things regarding his life in Russell, Kansas, the small town that he was born in and grew up in, and you know, his early outlook as a football and basketball and track star before the war cuts that plan short for him. Talked a lot about his war service, talked a lot about how he was injured, and injured in the line of duty trying to rescue somebody else, and suffered consequences of war. And the time it took for him to recover in the field, the hospitalization. You know, his small town of Russell, Kansas, started a crowdfunding process to help him with his recovery. And there was a cigar box that friends, family members made donations to help with the 39 months that it took for Bob to go through his hospitalizations and his recovery. You know, we've talked tonight about, you know, his years of service in the House and the Senate. We've talked some about his involvement with the World War II Memorial and how he was a big driving force on making sure that memorial got implemented, got available for us as a country to see and recognize the work that the greatest generation did in keeping and providing the freedoms for us. We've talked some about the honor flights and the effort that Bob took, even when the weather wasn't good, even when he may not have been feeling well himself, that he would come out and greet all these World War II veterans and veterans from other wars who were coming to the memorial that he had helped implement. And my father, before he passed away, was one of those veterans that was able to come and attend an honor flight and participate in that process. And it meant so much to watch those veterans as they come through that process. They're actually like little kids again. When they get off the bus and tour through the monuments and in some cases relive some past life, but in other cases just reconnect with their brothers in arms. We talked some about with Kansas, and we talked about the friends and family of Bob Dole. One of his favorite sayings was, you know, remember where you're from. And that's important for us, particularly as Kansans, to remember that where we're from and what we should do and what we should stand up for and be responsible for. I had the honor as state treasurer to participate in a lot of the stops through the counties that Bob Dole participated in. And it was a time for him to reconnect with old friends. And it was amazing to see the respect and admiration that came from his fellow Kansans as they sat down and talked with their friend Bob. And the funny thing about that, or the inspiring thing, maybe is a better word for me to use, was just to watch his interaction with fellow Kansans, people that he may not have seen for years, or in some cases decades, but he could talk about the same issues with them. He could talk about their family members, be able to connect with the stories that they had, be able to ask the questions about, now, do you still have that big rock on the hill that was in the way when you're trying to work through with the cropland? And it's an interesting life to be able to watch him lead. You know, he's had an impact on not just Kansas, but Americans and internationally. The influence on people that he's been able to touch throughout his life will never be known by all of us, but his engagement, his ability to win friends, his ability to help lead and solve problems will be forever admired. There's maybe a small army, if you want to call it that, of people that have worked with Senator Dole throughout his life and were engaged in him either as an intern or a staffer in his office, or connected with one of his campaigns, or connected with one of his causes that he got engaged in. And it's important that all of us recognize the value that he has created for the world today. And last but not least, let's not forget his humor and wit. I mean, we talk about all of the commentary and several of the stories that were told tonight talked about the way he approached life and admired and the comments that he made, and just reflective of what type of man he was. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to say, may God bless Bob Dole and care for his wife Elizabeth and daughter Robin. Kansans, Americans, and people throughout the world will miss you, but are better off for knowing you and for your years of service that you provided to us. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 4th, 2021, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, for 30 minutes.